The sun was just beginning to rise over the quiet suburban stretch of Laurel Ridge when Officer Marcellus Reed felt something he rarely felt on duty, an unexplained heaviness in his chest, as if the day itself carried a warning. He stood beside his patrol car, sipping lukewarm coffee, when Coda, his highly trained German shepherd, suddenly stiffened. The dog's ears shot up, his body locked forward, and a low growl rumbled from his throat. Before Marcellus could react, Coda bolted toward the distant tree line near the old railway bridge, pulling hard against his leash with an urgency Marcellus had never seen before. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories that remind us of the good still left in this world, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to RW Insights. It truly helps these stories reach more hearts. Marcellus rushed after Coda, his boots pounding against the dewy ground. The morning air grew sharper, the wind carrying a strange metallic scent, and with every step, the officer's heartbeat quickened. As they approached the abandoned stretch of railway, the distant sound of rumbling metal vibrated the rails. A train was coming. Coda barked wildly, pulling Marcellus down a narrow, overgrown path along the tracks. Then he saw her. A small girl, no older than 9, lay sprawled across the tracks, her wrists tied behind her back with coarse rope, her face streaked with dirt and tears. Her name, he would later learn, was Arietta Hale, and in that frozen moment, she looked up at Marcellus with eyes that held pure terror. The tracks trembled violently beneath them. The train was close, less than a minute away. Marcellus sprinted toward her, adrenaline firing through his veins. His hands shook as he dropped to his knees and worked frantically to untie the ropes, but the knot was brutal and tightened with every tug. The roar of the oncoming train grew louder, the horn blasting a warning that reverberated through the valley. Coda barked furiously, circling them, pushing his head against Arietta's shoulder as if willing her to stay awake. Come on, Marcellus muttered under his breath, his fingers burning. Finally, the rope snapped free. Without wasting a second, he scooped Arietta into his arms and jumped off the tracks just as the train thundered past, wind whipping violently against them. For a few long seconds, Marcellus held Arietta close as Coda pressed his body protectively against her legs. The girl gasped desperately for air, gripping the officer's vest as though anchoring herself back to life. When the train finally passed, the world fell into an eerie silence, the kind that only follows a brush with death. As they moved away from the tracks, Arietta whispered through trembling lips that she hadn't been alone before she was tied down. She spoke of a shadowy figure, a familiar voice, and a betrayal she couldn't process. Marcellus listened carefully, his protective instincts heightening with every word. What she said next froze him in place. It was my uncle, she whispered. He said it was my fault, all of it. Over the next several hours, as Arietta rested safely under the supervision of paramedics, Marcellus worked the case with a fire he had never felt before. Arietta's uncle, Rowan Hale, had been her guardian since her parents passed away 2 years earlier. Neighbors described him as stern, impatient, and troubled, but no one had imagined he was capable of harming a child. Digging deeper, Marcellus discovered Rowan's increasing financial debts, unpaid bills, and a string of desperate decisions that had spiraled out of control. Seeing Arietta as a burden rather than a grieving child, Rowan had convinced himself the world would be better off without her. It wasn't madness, it was heartless calculation. As Marcellus absorbed the truth, something inside him cracked. He had joined the force to protect people, to be the shield he never had as a child growing up in a chaotic, broken home. Seeing Arietta, so small and fragile, revived memories he had spent years burying. He knew what it felt like to be discarded by the very people meant to love you. And he refused, absolutely refused, to let her suffer that pain any longer. While backup units searched for Rowan, Marcellus stayed by Arietta's side in the hospital. She clung to Coda, burying her face in the dog's fur, whispering softly as if confiding secrets she couldn't share with anyone else. Coda responded with gentle licks and warm, steady presence, the unconditional love only a dog could offer. When Arietta finally fell asleep, Marcellus made himself a quiet promise: this girl would never again feel alone. Rowan was eventually apprehended hiding in an abandoned shed near the outskirts of town. The moment he was placed in cuffs, Marcellus felt a weight lift, not because justice had been served, but because Arietta was finally safe. But the real healing, he knew, would take far longer. In the days that followed, Marcellus visited Arietta often. At first, she barely spoke. But Coda became the bridge between them, nudging her hand, resting his head on her lap, coaxing out smiles that seemed impossible days earlier. Slowly, Arietta began to open up, about her parents, her fears, her confusion, and her hope. Marcellus listened, never pushing, always patient. He realized that saving her from the tracks was only the beginning. She needed someone who believed in her future, someone who wouldn't abandon her the way life had so cruelly done before. Social services eventually stepped in, and when they asked Marcellus if he would consider temporary foster care while long-term arrangements were sorted, he felt the answer rise from his heart before it reached his lips. "Yes," he said simply. "She deserves a home, even if it starts with mine." Arietta moved in with Marcellus weeks later, and Coda greeted her with the same joyful bark he had given her on the day he saved her life. Each day that followed, Arietta grew stronger, laughing more, sleeping peacefully, finding colors in the world again. And each day, Marcellus realized the truth: she had saved him too. The wounds he carried for years finally began to heal through the very child he rescued. If this story touched your heart, please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe to RW Insights. Your support helps keep these meaningful stories alive. Special request: please comment your thoughts. Your words matter more than you know.